All right, we're episode 2. Welcome back to the State of Flow. We are soft, not soft.
Soft, not soft.
Let's kick it off, boys.
And it sounds like we're kicking this one off with how to take on more with less stress. Is that right?
You got it.
Take on more with less stress, boys. What do you got here? Who wants to kick this one off?
Ooh, let's go with Russ. I want to hear this one.
I was like, I know Russ is stressed as fuck all the time,
Yeah.
so I want Russ to kick this off.
I mask it well, like internally, really. Yeah, no, man, it's immensely stressful when you start your own business. And I think if it wasn't stressing you out, it's probably because you don't care and you actually don't want to have a successful business is part of it. And a lot has to do is like you just don't want to let people down. Like now you have I have employees, I have people relying on me. I have to pay their wage every month. Other people are deciding they're putting a lot of trust in me and what I have to do. And this comes down to taking on more work, but less stress. And by no means do I have this figured out, but I'll share what I've been trying to do.
yeah, for sure.
So I'll say that front and center. So one thing that I've been implementing in terms of trying to reduce my stress is at this point, I've really just accepted the fact that the stage I'm at, I'll have to deal with the amount of work I do. I just have to find a way to make it more efficient, more better, remove myself from some of it, but I'm still always going to have a ton on my plate. So setting that expectation that why don't I have to do this or why do I have so much to do is probably not a reality of mine right now. But what I'm trying to do to mask the stress better, and this is totally controversial on what the topic is I'm trying to implement some better lifestyle changes that will allow me to handle it. So I am sleeping a lot more. So I went through the whole phase of and I always say I was the total fucking early riser douche that told everyone how early they wake up just so I could feel a good pump up.
I'm literally going to buy Russ a t-shirt that just says 5 a.m. club.
Oh, freak. It was like 4 a.m. for a while there.
There you go.
In the reality of what I was doing is that it wasn't attainable. Like I had no longevity in what I was doing. So in order to still mask the same amount of workload, I do have to make some lifestyle changes that allows me to reset and recover quicker. So the easiest way to do that is I'm sleeping a lot more. The second way is I am implementing more systems into the business that makes us more efficient. So I'm delegating tasks that I don't like to do. That comes in stages, right? There's still things that I will have to do and will continue to do that I don't enjoy. I don't feel like, and a lot of business owners like you hear this pretense that there's certain things that are above, which is true. Like you want to be above that, but do not treat your employees like that. So even though it may be above your set of skills or what you have to learn, the people that are doing those tasks for you, you still treat it like it was potentially you doing it. And that's how you got to look at it and treat them there. The handling the more workload, yeah, that's what I'm trying to do is pass off some work to other people. But with doing that, I am taking on some bigger leaps and bigger steps to grow and evolve our business. Just like what I was talking about on the first podcast, I do review every quarter. So that's one of the things I have to do today is go through the whole 3 months of my business, where I looked, where I came up short, what I could potentially not do better. It's never, or where some shortcomings. So masking that whole less stress, less work thing isn't really doing it. I'm just more focusing on bringing down the stress. And I think a lot of my stress that I had was I was setting massive goals that were bogging me down when I weren't reaching them. So I had these massive goals that this is what I needed to achieve. And I set a lot of expectations on myself that were very far reaching because you know what I mean? You're striving. That's what we do. We got to hustle. Where now I've lowered that down and have a lot better understanding hey, I'm going to work really hard. I'm going to do everything I can to make this possible. But if it doesn't happen today, if I'm able to mask this stress and carry this workload for actually 10 years without burning out, I will achieve whatever I desire.
Wow, it's very profound and actually really insightful. It made me think about how for a while, a lot of my stress in my side of the business was when you're saying about setting high expectations, right? Social media, like Instagram, for like a good like 2 years kind of fucked with me really bad. So it was like, to give some context, it was like just after I graduated university, I won a bunch of money from a pitch competition for my mobile home business. So I was like, and I just had finished up at Coachella. So like I was literally at the highest of highs. Like this was like, I feel like one of the like pinnacles of my life, right? And then I get like that summer thrown into the weeds of like a house flip, that like first ever house flip I ever did, while also doing a couple mobile home flips. And it was the most stressful, grueling summer. Like it was mentally, like it took a huge toll on me. And you know what didn't help was I would then go on Instagram to like escape from like the stress side. I didn't want to like deal with it like when I was finished up at like working and stuff. And what would I see on Instagram? Like certain guys that I follow, same age as me or like even younger, ripping a fucking Lambo. Oh, I'm hanging out with my friends, just made $1 million this month or what, you know what I mean? Like just outrageous stuff. And that actually like messed with me for a while because I just like compare myself to them and I'm like, I'm in the wrong industry. What the hell am I doing? Like I'm slaving away. This is like stupid. Like, and it was my fault. It was my mentality. And I had to like kind of stop and realize it and realize that I was like in a huge comparison syndrome, like where I would just like compare myself to others, which then just made my stress even worse because I'm harder on myself. Where now I like, obviously there's stress involved, but I mean, throughout like being that stressed, now the stress seems like nothing for me. And like, just like you start to evolve the way you handle the stress too. Like, you know, let's say like 3 years ago when I had my first like water line that broke underneath a mobile home, that was like crazy stressful for me. One broke in January and it was no big deal, right? Like actually we had 2 different breaks and it's like, it's stressful at the time, but you just know that now you know the outcome is going to get fixed no matter what. So it's like, oh, what's the worst case that's going to happen? So stress is also like the unknown, I guess, is what I'm trying to say is when you find out what, like your mind can always go to the worst case, which will always create more stress. But once you kind of are able to say, what's the worst that can happen? You're able to bring the stress level down a bit.
Would you say you've adapted then? Like
Oh, yeah.
you've adapted to being stressful?
Oh, yeah.
I think
Yeah.
Talon has like one of the best points I've heard when he shares about this is people feel like that your life should just be like rainbows and butterflies and that you should never be stressed, which is not the case. Like us as human
No.
beings, we are meant to be stressed. Like we have our brain operates at certain functions that is going to make us stressed, and it's for our human nature how we like how things. You can explain way better than I can, but
Yeah, like pressure makes diamonds. You know, like that's like probably the best way to sum it up is there's a certain amount of stress and there are good kinds of stress that are optimal. You can even like pull from Taleb's anti-fragility model. Like if you gain from stress, that's anti-fragility. Working out is gaining from stress.
Yeah.
But if you overwork out, you like totally annihilate yourself and then it takes a lot longer for you to come back. So it's more about finding the optimal level of stress. And I think it's interesting what Landon was saying about like adapting to being able to handle more stress.
Mm-hmm.
Because you do. I know when I first got into real estate, man, I used to get so stressed when anything happened on my properties. Like always. Like
Yeah.
I'd get a message from my tenants and I'd just like, oh, like my whole day is ruined, right? Now I get a text from them and I'm just like, okay, what am I going to have to deal with? Let's quickly just deal with it. And it doesn't even phase me. And this is like psychologically how to explain it. Because I love that Russ explained handling stress very practically. Like you were like, hey, here's some practical solutions. I'm going to delegate. I'm going to systemize. I'm going to get more sleep. I'm like, those are like fantastic practical solutions. I want to like go to the flip side and be like, hey, what are the mental psychological solutions? Are eliminating what would be called level 2 pain. So you guys think about it. I'll explain what it is and why it's relevant. So we've all had cold showers.
Yeah.
And they fucking suck sometimes, right? But they're also great. That's a good stress thing. But when you get in the cold, that is level 1 pain. The second that the cold shower hits your body and you actually feel the pain, you're like, holy shit, like this stings, like it hurts. So any actual pain you experience in that moment is called level 1 pain. Level 2 pain is the psychological pain that you attach to the level 1 pain. So this would be level 2 pain. You've had a cold shower before and you know it sucks. So before you even get in, you're already sitting there being like, fuck, this is going to suck. Like shit, like this is going to sting. And you actually make it worse by adding like the level 2 pain before the pain even happens. You're not even in the shower feeling it and you're already feeling pain. Think about that. Like, it's crazy. And they did studies on monks who would meditate and work towards delayed gratification. They hooked their brains up to this mechanism to like figure out how they were working. And the monks would not feel any level 2 pain before they did something uncomfortable. They only ever felt the pain in the moment, not before and not after. So you can train your mind to eliminate level 2 pain by like just not giving it more emphasis. Like an example, let's say you have a huge day. Like I'm sure, Russ, there's some days you get up and you're like, fuck, I have so much to do today. Like, how am I even going to do this? That's level 2 pain. Like, you're priming yourself for failure. You're psychologically giving it more weight and making it worse, but you're not even in the thick of doing it. Like, don't feel the pain until you're actually doing it. Do not like overemphasize your own pain.
Do you think that's why when you look at like Wim Hof, who does like the, ice bath, like cold therapy, he makes you do this like priming exercise before you enter? And do you think that's like part of it could be like the psychological effect of like you're now priming yourself instead of preparing for the level 2 pain that your brain might already know about? You're now priming yourself to be like the kind of like beast mentality of like, doesn't fucking matter what it is. It's going to be fine.
Yeah, you just do it.
Yeah. So it's like his method before you jump in. He always does this like crazy exercise and then this like you're priming yourself.
Yeah.
It's like
And then-
Ramadan meditation, right? Like in
Yeah.
terms of like firing himself up.
Yeah.
I get to test that because I jumped in the lake last year in the middle of summer and I had done cold showers for like 2 years religiously, almost every day. And I just jumped in and I've not really been able to do a cold shower since.
Yeah,
Like,
I think what you just told is like unlocked something in Russ's brain.
Dude.
Like, I'm experiencing level 2 pain.
Dude, it might be level 3. I don't know.
Not in the middle of summer though. You said in the middle of winter.
Winter. Yeah, it's
Winter,
January.
yeah.
So it was like super cold.
That's
and I
fucking
stayed in
cold
there
here in
way too
Canada.
long. This was probably another ego thing. Like I'm like, oh, I do fucking cold showers all the time. I can do this. But like I didn't prime my body or anything. Like
No.
I literally just jumped.
You're in there for like 5 minutes.
Yeah. Which,
That's-
like not.
That's insane for the
tough.
temperature.
That's tough, man.
But
Yeah.
after I literally felt sick.
Well, yeah,
Well,
because like you were
yeah.
probably on the verge of like hypothermia. Or
So
something.
yeah, like I probably should have like because he talks
Yeah.
about doing that. Like it releases all those like would it be it's not dopamine but it
Endorphins?
yeah, like it releases things that like naturally like elevate your core temperature and
Yeah.
like
Oh,
primes
yeah.
yourself in
Yeah.
order to do it. And I didn't have any of that. I just like literally jumped in.
Yeah, you make a good point, and this is all related to how do you take on more without the stress. Is like level 3 pain is trauma. Like,
Okay,
like
no.
that's level 3.
Oh, you're level 3. Shit.
So like if you
Taylor
take
just
the analogy
upgraded you from
further,
level 2 to
yeah,
3.
you're traumatized, Russ. Is like that is what trauma is. Like the body is meant to handle a certain level of stress and adapt to those stressors. But if you go too far, it's actually traumatic and it will like affect you long term. Like it is hard to recover from it. Let's say lifting weights is a good example. You want to find the optimal amount of weight to lift that it's like just beyond your boundary, right? But if you go too heavy, you're going to actually hurt yourself. You're never going to recover. That's like physical trauma.
Talking about for stress and like what you do is I've changed out my whole workout routine. Like it's all about like because when you lift, like I used to lift really heavy, work out really hard, and then my nervous system was always tired. So now like I literally just work out pretty much like what Tristan has us on, like longevity and becoming more athletic again, where I'm not like pushing the boundaries just because like the mental capacity is way more important than me making physical gains right now.
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%, man. I find it too, if you're taking on a lot in your day to like murder yourself in the gym, like I just don't think it's optimal for performance.
It's a good point. I never thought about it from the mental side. So I've always thought about it from the physical side, but like that.
I would say
Makes
especially
sense.
when you're trying to like all the people that really try to lift heavy all the
To
time.
mentally push
It's
yourself.
so taxing on your nervous system. Like it's not beneficial if you're trying to be creative.
Dude, I'll give you as an example. This is a story. So back when I was like really into fitness, Tristan and I were on this really strict regime. I wasn't allowed to go out for food or like anything like that. And one day I'm like, you know what? I've been doing pretty good. Like I don't mind like bending the rules a little bit here and there. I'm going to go to sushi. And like to Tristan be my trainer, he was just like, hell no. Like, but I'd already gone. So he was really upset. So he's like, okay, because you went to sushi, like you are going to be punished for your actions. We are going to do military mayhem. I have like a military workout plan for you and I'm going to fucking kill you, because he was so upset with me. So he did this workout and I had a business meeting after where I had to do a presentation. And like, when I mean he murked me, like I was fucking dead. Like I could have just gone to sleep after this workout. It was like probably in the top 3 hardest workouts I've ever done. Like for the level I was at, he went way, way beyond my capability. And did I do it? Yes, but it almost killed me. And I went to do that presentation after, and the people actually said, like, is there something wrong with you? Like, you can't think. Like you're usually so good with your words, and right now you're not even able to convey like a simple idea. Like, what happened to you? And I was like, oh, my brother just did this military mayhem workout. And they all kind of laughed, and they're like, dude, like, go home and sleep. Like, you can't even do this presentation. Like, it actually fucked me up so bad. I couldn't even think to do a presentation because I was so mentally exhausted from using so much willpower to like push through that workout. So I think if you want to actually optimize for business, I think you want to like work out for longevity.
That's explained a lot for me right now.
Yeah.
Because there's times that I'm just like, what the fuck is going on with my brain? But like, it does make sense.
Yeah, no, you got to find the perfect balance where like the whole idea of what the purpose why we would truly work out for is because like I don't believe any of us are trying to like have some sick pics on Instagram of like our non-existing current abs. Like that's not what we're working for. We're literally working to become better performing businessmen, more high performance. So you need to do workouts that energize you, not tax your nervous system.
I mean, I also want to get to like 185 pounds. Pretty jacked, but I mean, I'll do both.
It'll come after. The Alex Hormozy, like you get rich first, Jack second.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you can get tanned after.
Yeah, tanned is third. Tanned's level 3.
Get that, what is that, the Jersey Shore, like gym tan laundry?
Yeah, gym tan laundry, yeah.
I actually religiously watched that show as a kid. I thought it was awesome.
Actually, everybody did, man. That was.
I've actually never seen an episode before.
What?
That might be the original. Like,
it's
like
I didn't even know what it was. It was just like it was unreal. This is kind of a side note, but I like with those guys. Imagine if they were like in today's era of like YouTube and everything, like in today's world of social media, how insane that would be.
I agree, but in terms of them becoming profitable, like I think this goes back to like when you create that content and what you do is like their business and what they're going to be able to achieve is capped. And this is going to sound controversial because like you look at all the content creators, all the people that all they try to do is be shitheads on TikTok, on all those things just to get attention. They're literally capped at the level they can reach. Like that's why like there's such a difference between Logan Paul and Jake Paul. Logan Paul literally has limitless potential and Jake Paul is capped at just the way he acts. People will always view him unless he does some, like I'm not hating on the guy because like he's obviously done mind-blowing things like what he does and he's very strategic with everything he does. But I believe he is actually capped on how much potential his business could have.
So what's interesting is I actually kind of I agree with what you're saying, but I also disagree about like the Jersey Shore thing. So think about if like right now, I would argue they make more money off of like their personal brands and what they've built through their like history as like the people part of Jersey Shore. But imagine if that was like back in the day, if they had that. Like they were controlled within a network, right? That monetized a lot of what happened with Jersey Shore. But imagine if they had more. Okay, you know what the best example is? Netflix shows nowadays. If you're a star of like this like up and coming Netflix show, it doesn't really matter if you make money on the Netflix show or not, because you know on the back end you're going to blow up on social media, and with that fame comes attention, which comes the monetization side of things, right? So like let's say I think like Outer Banks was like kind of a show that came out of nowhere, right? Well, like the 2 main characters from that were like nobody knew who the hell they were before. Now they're like some of the biggest actors in the world. And they probably didn't make very much on like the first season of Outer Banks, but they're making a shitload, I bet you, from their personal branding.
Yeah, I could see that.
So that's all I was saying is like, if that was like back in the day, I just imagine
There's just
because
so
of the
much more
attention they
opportunities
had.
now.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question for Russ now that you made me think about this because we're reading the third circle theory right now. When you say capped, do you think they're capped in terms of business growth, or is that your way of articulating that you think they will not have a good legacy?
I say opportunity.
Opportunity.
So I feel like Logan Paul will have a lot more people reaching out to him to
Mhm.
be a partner on a business venture than Jake will.
You know, I would, from the outside looking in, I would probably agree with that. And I'm not like at their level to understand that. But I get your point, though, that even Logan Paul, like his whole thing the past couple of years has been to change his brand.
Yeah, he did that very well.
And he succeeded. Like, he definitely succeeded. He's one of the biggest influencers, if not one of the most famous people on the planet, I would say.
Yeah.
And it's because I think he realized that he was capped. And that in order to go to the next stage, it's like the idea that you can't get where you're going doing what you've always done.
Yes.
You know, like I think he hit like a certain point where he goes, oh, well, now this is what I want to do now, but I can't do that and do this at the same time. I now almost have to like start from zero and like redo my whole model just to be able to go higher, which I think actually caps a lot of entrepreneurs. This could be a bigger talk that we could get into is we talked last episode about people not wanting to delegate. Well, that's a good example of they've capped because they can only do so much output as one person. They now have to take a step back to then take 2 steps forward.
Yeah, it's like the example you talk about, like you go up, you hit the peak of like the first mountain, and then you literally have to go back down and then go all the way back up to get to the next peak, right? And it's like I guess that was like the conversation we were having the one time where it was like you have to unlearn. What was it again? Like you
basically have to like realize that what you've done has a limit and that what you're doing is no longer serving you. You have to adopt like new beliefs and new systems in order to go higher.
You articulated it in a different way before. It was like the way you explained, you basically remember we had talked the one day.
I remember. I just can't remember what I said.
Yeah, shit. It was really good because it basically what it said is like you get up to a certain point and so basically once you get up to like say a level 2, right? Because level 1 would be like you know nothing and you're just learning. Then you get to level 2 where you know it. But then to get to level 3, you said you have to then essentially unlearn what you've learned to a degree.
Yeah, you have to unlearn it all. You do because what
got you to level 2 is not going to get you to level 3.
So you have to unlearn, and you have to accept that what you're doing that is working will no longer work if you want to go higher.
That's right.
That's the weird thought of it is people will use the argument. Like, let's say you do build a business and you're a one-man show and you're making $100K a year. And it's like, hey, to go to 200K, everything you're doing right now, you need to stop doing that. They're like, well, if I stop doing that, I'm going to lose my revenue because this is what got me to 100K. And it's such a hard thing to wrap your head around is, hey, this thing that's working, yeah, don't do that. People are like, are you fucking crazy? Like, why would I stop doing this? It's working. It's like, no, like think long term. You need to unlearn that and learn a new set of skills, and then you'll double your outputs every time. But it's such a hard thing for people to wrap their head around.
The third circle theory related it to a restaurant owner. Like the guy I think his uncle was a restaurant owner, and he had a ton of momentum with just the amount of traction that like his restaurant was doing it. And he phrased it like he could have really franchised it if he removed himself from running the actual restaurant and focused on growth and franchising. It's no different than say like Boston Pizzas and stuff like that. The guy had the momentum of creating like a restaurant that appealed to everyone else. And it's Jim Truvillion, right?
The guy,
True Living.
I know Jim.
Him and
person,
one other.
Yeah. And he realized that, hey, we have a really good product here. He moved himself and he just focused on getting more stores.
So what my
more
uncle did with Royal Pizzas.
Yeah,
he
like,
literally.
it doesn't have to be where he becomes a fucking billionaire.
No.
But you could, your uncle would be a great example.
Like he basically took it where he was running it, and then he basically worked a deal to this other guy that was basically his like kind of right hand man, from my understanding, within the one core restaurant. And he basically like said, over the next whatever 20 years, I'll give you I'll sell you the restaurant. You can work your way to doing it, but you have to run it, you have to manage it, and you have to do all that. And then that way it kind of pulled my uncle from the day to day, and he was able to then franchise it out and built it up to an incredible business it is today. So it's just like and then he had to learn that whole process of like, you know, franchising and that whole business side of it, right? And it I think you're always having to like learn and evolve, and then reflect on like what you think works right now won't always work moving forward. And that's why like a lot of businesses died during like the technological wave, right? Because what you thought like let's say like salesmen, for example, like you thought like the classic like go here, go there to close a sale worked then won't work now when somebody can jump on a Zoom and it's just a matter of what value you bringing me.
I think Sears would be a good example of that.
Oh yeah.
Still trying to use their Christmas catalog to sell products.
Man.
Like,
Oh yeah.
They had such an
I remember the
opportunity
hype
to
of that as a
innovate.
kid, though. Like you get that
Oh,
fucking
yeah.
Yeah, it was
catalog, you got
awesome.
your Sharpie, you like circle
Dude,
on
it
it,
was
you
the
give
best
it to
thing
your
ever.
grandma.
I
Yeah.
forgot about that
Yeah.
actually. I'm like, that
It was
that
the
awesome.
greatest thing ever. And I mean, they could have innovated and just dominated e-commerce.
Yeah.
Well,
But they
the
didn't.
Bartulis were the first people to set up that e-commerce store for Staples.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how many years ago was that? Like they actually helped Shopify too.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Because they were on the come up as soon as like Shopify was growing. I think
Yeah.
they're growing at the same time. And I think they
I
were
think
like
s-
within in Ontario.
Like
So
I could be misquoting this, but how they phrase it is like Staples was the first like big chain store to go online to sell, like an actual like store, e-commerce store,
Wow.
where you could order
Crazy.
directly from their website.
yeah. Yeah. I think it's a function of like always questioning your beliefs. I think that's what it is, questioning your own beliefs. Because like if you believe this is the right way, well, why is it the right way to go about it? Can you change that way and scale it a different way?
I would even change the wording. I get what you're saying, but it's making me think, how could I like alter my own beliefs? Instead of saying this is the right way, change it to saying this is what's working today, but will it work tomorrow?
Yes. Yeah.
Is like, markets just naturally like loop back into themselves. Like people are competing and that competition drives the market to go into a certain position. Like let's say Sears, they didn't adopt because the market all of a sudden started to move over here with different innovation. And they're like, well, this is working. Why would we do this? This is how we've always made our money. Instead of like realizing, well, now that the market has shifted this way, consumers are going this way.
Yeah.
And you either have to like adopt and like find new ways to innovate within that formula or die. And it's, they definitely didn't do that. Like what gets you, going back to the pizza analogy, what gets you the restaurant doesn't get you the franchise. There was do you have something else to add to
No,
that? Though?
go.
I remember one of the other things that was on our list to talk about today was the 4 stages of learning. I feel like
4 stages of competence.
of competence. Yes,
Yeah.
not learning, of competence.
Yeah, so that was what I was just gonna pull up is like, or I guess it's you could call it the 4 stages of like human development. So stage 1 would be unconscious incompetence. So that's like all of our blind spots, right? Then the second stage that you get to is conscious incompetence, where we are aware of our incompetences. Basically, you're aware of all the blind spots you have as a person. Then the third would be you're consciously competent. So you're aware of all your blind spots and you're taking action to become more competent and to kind of avoid the blind spots. And then the kind of ultimate level you could hit, which would be like, stage 4 is you're unconsciously competent.
Yeah.
I can't fucking speak today. So yeah, I wanted to kind of dive into that and get your boys' take on the 4 stages and like kind of what your thoughts are on it. Like, I really like the idea behind when you're unconsciously competent.
Dude,
Like it's just
I have so much I could go on about.
Like,
with this topic.
to me, the unconsciously competent speaks to like you're in a flow state. Like to me, that's what I kind of relate it back to, is like you're in such a state of flow that you don't need to like constantly be thinking about all the blind. Like you just know you unconsciously know what you need to do, and you're able to kind of just move in that.
That's like the idea of success becoming like autopilot. To me, is the unconscious competence in some way.
Yeah,
Where
yeah, autopilot. Yeah, that's
This
a good
is why
word.
I think it's so cool. Is years ago, I was talking to a friend, and I think I had like just recently broke up with my girlfriend or something like that, and I was like, man, like what the heck is going on? Like, what kind of dating advice do you have for me? And she's like, just be yourself. And I remember thinking about it. I'm like, is that actually good advice? Is just be yourself good advice? This is something I thought about for years. So like clearly I overthink literally fucking everything. But I was like, hey, why is like just be yourself? It's contextually good advice, I would say, depending on context. So let's say that you're naturally gifted at basketball and you're just trying to get even better at basketball. It's like, well, dude, just do you. Like you're good at basketball. Like don't really try, just like get out of your own way. Like that's when people say get out of your own way, it's like you have the skills. Why don't you just allow yourself to use them? But that advice does not work for other people who are in the first stage of like unconscious incompetence. Like let's say that like you were trying to teach someone how to go networking at a business meeting and they don't know how to talk to fucking anyone. They got social anxiety, they have no idea. And they're like, just be yourself, man. Just get out there and just chat with them. It's like, dude, this guy doesn't even know how to talk to people. If he's just going to be himself, he's going to make zero connections. It's actually horrendous advice. Where like let's say that one of us was going to a business meeting, like we're social dudes, like we go out, we network quite a bit, and you're just like, man, like there's some like really successful people here, like I'm kind of nervous. Like we'd all just be like, dude, like get out of your own way and stop thinking about it. Just be yourself. It'll be fine. So I think just be yourself only works if you're unconsciously competent, but it does not work if you're unconsciously incompetent.
That is, I always think like how I relate it to is like how like Naval speaks, right? Like he is so competent and has such a high level of understanding that he can speak with it with such like so fluid. It just comes to him. And like your point about networking and the example of the guy can't communicate it properly is amazing advice. Like if someone's looking to connect with more people, looking to network, but don't have the actual skills to come and initiate a conversation. I'm sure we've all met those people, especially at like networking events, like the one dude that just kind of like would stand there, wouldn't say much or whatever, you know what I mean? Or like is trying to, but he's doing the best that he can. But just like you said, like he doesn't have those skills to just like come up and strike a conversation. Like that would be something that you're like really good at, is like you just can go up to anyone, start talking and like have a good legit conversation with all those people.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like having that understanding in the 4 stages, I think that's what makes me most excited about having this podcast, putting a lot of content on YouTube. It's like building, I would almost say, that third stage where we've done all the research, we're in the thick of things, building a business, we learn about it immensely, we're applying all the skills. Like for me, I just need to learn how to deliver it better. And that's probably going to take 20 years, right? Like in order to talk about business and investing where it just rolls off your tongue, like you have such a high understanding, you don't have to think of what you say because the topic comes in, you're like, you have so much to talk about because you've done it. And that's the coolest part about learning how to deliver it, because that's how I believe you get to the next step. When you can just, you know what I mean? Someone says, here, talk about this. And they're like, wow.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's that unconscious competence again.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that front. And I think like, actually, you know what? I don't even have anything more to say. I think that was a great way to kind of explain it. But while we're on the like the topic of networking, what are some like tips that you guys would give to let's say the listeners that they can kind of take away when it comes to networking? And you know, it's obviously super nerve-wracking going in. Let's say you're like going into a room with nobody you've ever met. Like you're literally just coming to some random event, and like most people at that event know each other already, so they're already familiar. They're kind of shooting the shit, whatever. What's your guys' advice for somebody that's like nervous going into that scenario? Like, what can they do to not only feel a little bit more confident going into it, but
Man, I got a good one. So like this one is like hits near and dear for me because I did not have good social skills growing up, like at all. I was terrible at talking to people. I remember being in like grade 11 and an attractive girl sat beside me in high school and I was just like, didn't even know what to say to her. Like my parents had a nice car, it's a Camaro, and I drove it to school that day. And she sits beside me and says, "Hey, are you the one that drives the Camaro?" And I was just like, "Yep."
Sup.
Like I didn't even know like what to say at all. So like social skills for me were not something that came very natural. They were something that I worked a lot of my early 20s to develop. And as someone who was always told growing up that I was smart, like just 'cause I just enjoy intellectual like topics, and studying things. I think because I had bad social skills, I'm like, well, what am I naturally good at? And it was learning. So I just learned things and then used it as a crutch for my bad social skills. So I'm like, oh, because I know things about these topics, they'll like me. But the best tip I ever got for social interaction was that all that people care about are your vibe and your values. Like whenever you go into a social situation, you either convey values or vibe. That's it. And I'm like, fuck, that is such a good tip. Because think about the first thing that you want, like when you meet someone, is this guy fun to be around and good energy? And do we have similar values? Like even if you're thinking about it unconsciously, like that's what people are thinking about. Do I want to let them into my in group? And like, are they like me? And are they fun to be around? Like that's vibe and values. So if you're going to go to a networking event, I would say like be a little bit looser, like have fun, like try to like think of ways to stand out a little bit in a conversation. Like one thing, this is more of like a tactic on this, like for having fun, is turn your questions into statements. Questions take value, statements give value. So if you walk up to someone like, hey, what do you do for work? Boring. And everyone's going to ask you, so be prepared to answer it. But what you could do is do a statement instead. I could look at you and just be like, dude, what the hell do you do for work? Like, you look like you've been golfing all day, so I'm going to take it that you make $1 million at least per year.
Absolutely.
Like, how are you going to respond to that? You're going to tell me what you do for work. But I didn't ask you what you did for work. I didn't try to like take value and be like, hey, I don't really have anything to say. So like, what do you do for work? Can you lead the conversation? I'm just like, dude, like you've clearly been at the golf course all day, so obviously know that you're killing it. Like
That's a great example.
Yeah, like just like vibe and value. So that was the best thing or best tip I ever got was if you're going to go to a social situation, people don't care how smart you are. They don't really care what you know until they like you. Then they care how much value that you can provide them. But they need to like you first. And they like you based on if you have a similar worldview, which is value, or if you're fun to be around, which is your vibe.
100%.
To add to that, I actually think one of the biggest pieces of advice I got was people like hearing themselves talk and people like talking about themselves. So I think the easiest icebreaker for somebody that's going to a networking event and just wants to like, I don't know, get to know the people there, right? You always got to break the ice. Do it in a way that like, obviously, like you're saying, like kind of go up and talk to somebody and then just genuinely be interested and ask them good questions about themselves. Make them want to further explain like don't ever make it about yourself. Always make it about the other person you're talking to. People love that. And it just kind of goes back to like the famous, like my mentor in university told me, like, you never go and ask for money because you'll only ever get advice. But if you go and ask for advice, you get a better chance of getting the money. And that's because people then feel like they're invested in it, right? And people like to kind of build up their own ego in that sense. And I think it just comes back to the networking thing of if you seem extremely genuinely interested and have a genuine conversation with that other person, but always gearing it towards what they're doing or about them or something associated, bringing it back to them, they will then be more interested to talk to you. And then thus you can start to convey whatever your values or just be more interesting, which then builds a relationship. But I think always making sure that, like, because I've seen it so many times where it's just like, even like I've gone up to people or let's say somebody's approached me at like a networking event one time and I was like talking to them for a few minutes, right? And I'm always the one, no matter who comes up to me, I'll always initiate and I just want to know who they are. But then you can just tell when somebody's just like gone way too much of a tangent about how great they are or about themselves. And I'm just like, okay, cool, dude. I'm not interested. Like, clearly you don't give a fuck about having a conversation with me. You just want to talk about you or what you're so great at. Yeah, but you know what I mean? So it's like, don't be that person at a networking event. Like, obviously, like, I think maybe I'm not the best to explain because I feel like it's just very easy for me to just have a very good conversation with somebody.
You've always been unconsciously competent, so you didn't even go through the stages.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm just used to that, right? But like that would be like my one piece of advice would just be always make sure that you're very interested in the person that you're talking to and actually seem genuinely interested. Don't just like start to like look away or get distracted when they're talking. Like, listen to what they're saying and then ask a question based on what they're saying. And you can always go back to asking a question, and that is the easiest way.
Okay, I have a question for you then. This is where I partially agree with what you're saying, and I want to see if you agree with me on this or if I'm just maybe thinking of this the wrong way. So that's like the how to win friends and influence people is show interest, right? Like everyone loves to talk about themselves, and I think it's right. Where I say vibe and values is I don't actually think it's good advice until the person already likes you. And I'll explain why. And I'm going to use an extreme example. So let's say that Brad Pitt was walking down the street and someone's like, dude, if you want to connect with someone, just go and like get them talking about themselves. Well, if I just go up to Brad Pitt and I'm like, dude, like, how are you? Like, you're Brad Pitt. And I try to get him talking about himself. Like, it just creates such a status imbalance that he's like, I know you're not on my level. Like, just the way you're talking to me creates like a status imbalance. And I'll even say my time as a teacher, like I love chatting with all my students, but there's just times where they'll come up like on day one and they're instantly like, what about this? What about this? And they're like asking me about myself. And I'm like, you're acting kind of like a fan, and it's weird. Like just because there's a natural status change, like a student comes into a class, you're a teacher, you have more status naturally than your students. So sometimes like, it's not like they're like fans, but they kind of act like how I imagine a fan would if you were a famous person, where they're just overly interested for what you could say is like not really any reason. It's almost like, and that's where like the showing interest thing to me is, it's great advice, like contextually, I think, because you can't just like go up to like people that are like really successful and just instantly show so much interest in them and like get them talking about themselves, because for one, it creates a status imbalance. And for two, I also think that they don't really know anything about you. So you're not really connecting with them, because at the end of the day, they're like, oh yeah, like he was a good guy to talk to, but like, do I even know anything about him? Do I know his values? Like what he does? Like, so that's where I think it's like a piece of the pie. So I want to see what you think about that.
Yeah. So I have two takes from it. I agree and disagree. So I agree if you're talking about let's say a larger networking event, or let's say you're in a room with like 500 people, or you're just walking down the street and want to network with somebody, right? Yes, I agree in that you have to be very charismatic to like get their attention. If you're in like a networking event with like 20 people and the purpose of it is networking or meeting other individuals, you don't have to be like I think people are already there to like meet other. So you do have to, how do I want to explain this? Like you do have to have some like charisma to you. Like you need to always like, and when I would go talk to somebody, like I don't just go up and like, hey, what do you do for work? Right? Like I make a very charismatic intro to talk to them, or I find a way to bridge the gap between what they're just standing there to like a conversation. So there's always a way to bridge the gap between like not talking to then a conversation with them. And I think in how you do that, and how I actually think it's not as much what you say, it's how you convey. So like
that'd be
you
fine.
can be a very charismatic person and just like if you're, it's just the way you convey and talk to somebody. And if you genuinely seem interested and you're talking and you like show like that charisma, like then people will subconsciously already align you with their values.
That's interesting. Yeah, that the way that you show interest is very important.
Yes.
Like don't just go up and show interest. It's how you do it.
And I think it's more the way you show up and like your personality and your voice, your tone, everything, as opposed to like what you say.
Do you think that have a lot to do with like communications, like 80% nonverbal?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, I think he's right. I think that you and I would align on this. We might just have different ways of looking at it, like slightly different perspectives, but we're really thinking the same thing.
I think we're literally thinking in the same lane. It's just like you're viewing it from one perspective. You're viewing it from a more technical perspective, whereas I'm trying to dissect the way I just normally do things, right?
I think I'm explaining it from a different perspective because of the process someone would go through to learn it.
Yes, and I agree with like what you're saying, and I think that the way you're explaining it is the way somebody should take the approach, especially if they're not already like naturally charismatic or naturally like if somebody just like walked up to me and was like, "Hi, I'm Jim. Like, what do you do for work?" Like, I'd be like, "Dude, you just killed the energy."
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
Get out of here. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like, hey, what's up, man? Like, what's your name? What do you do for work? Oh, sweet. Yeah. That instantly, just the tone of your voice instantly changes the way somebody's going to react.
Yeah. Yeah. Tone of voice is huge. It, yeah, one of the overarching things here is, all right, this is a relationship book, Models by Mark Manson. But what he says is the core of all unattractive social behavior is neediness. I'm like, fuck, that's actually really interesting. I think he's right. Like, what you're saying is you can show interest in other people, but they're showing interest in other people where you're looking for their validation, and you basically put them on a pedestal by giving them a lot of value without them ever, like, before they even really talk to you.
Yes.
But then there's being not needy and just being like, hey, I'm genuinely interested. Like, people are interesting. Like, what do you do? Like, just meeting somebody new and like coming at it from a non-needy perspective where there's no, like, I'm trying to get something from you. I really want to talk to you. Like, you are like someone I need to connect with, and just like, hey, like, I'm just genuinely interested, man. Like, what do you do for work? Like, totally different. If you eliminate the neediness.
That's two different, it conveys two different statuses.
It does, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah,
we went pretty deep on that. Like, what other topics do we got here?
Well, I was just gonna say, like, kind of to wrap it all up for a topic, like, going on another dopamine detox, boys. Getting off social again, which is hilarious because this is
it's hard.
Is when we're starting the ramp up of all of our content. And I was telling Maddie, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna like get off social media again. She's like, all right, I guess I'll post for you then. And so she's coming in clutch there. But yeah, I think like it'd be cool to talk quickly about a dopamine detox, and like
it's buzzy, that's for sure.
It's crazy buzzy. But even just like the actual like benefits of it, and I actually think this is like crazy, but this is probably an outlandish statement. I think if the whole world, especially like let's say Gen Zs, went on like a 30-day dopamine detox, like forced dopamine detox, the mental health crisis would be shifted overnight. Dude, that is a big statement, and like it's not saying all, like it's not overarching.
Solved, you said shifted.
Shifted. I'm not saying solved. I think it would just shift, and I think it's not gonna fix everybody's, but I actually think a lot of people think they're like depressed or like they're, low energy and sad when they're just depleted on dopamine because of our brains have literally been hacked by these corporations.
This is what I find funny is like the healthy lifestyles pushed off so hard on people nowadays, like being healthy, making sure like you eat right. Like we have all these things like don't eat gluten, all like, you know what I mean? So many different like quick little trips, like tips and tricks for us to be healthy. But why is the mental health crisis the highest it's ever been when we've evolved? And do you relate this 100%, not 100%, but majority to social media and the amount of like technology that has evolved?
Yes, I think it's a multifaceted.
Obviously, it's a massive problem.
But I think a good portion of it comes from literally our dopamine receptors, or whatever you would call them, being hacked and like overly stimulated, and then they become depleted. And then literally things become meaningless. Like things that used to be meaningful become meaningless because your brain's just searching. Your brain's literally just addicted to dopamine. It's just searching for the next hit. And like that's why like some of those like you look at like some posters where it like shows like almost like what it would look like as like a drug addict, but it's social media. It's like showing like it looks like ecstasy pills that are like in like the Twitter symbol and the Instagram symbol, or like there was like one where like the guy's like hooked up to his phone like in his arm, you know what I mean? And it's just like I genuinely think
it's actually pretty jokes.
Right? But I like
it drives the point home.
Yeah. They're hacking our brain. That's what it is.
Well, I would say whenever like, and I'm gonna do the same thing too, like delete it all. And it's fucking funny because we're literally what we're trying to do is get people to follow.
Yeah.
Like we want them to watch all this stuff. So
yeah,
it's definitely convoluted in what we're giving our message in terms of the State of Flow podcast, but it's 100% accurate just because I know when I've watched a lot of, like, say when I was buzzing off Trevor Wallace, when I just was like watched all his shit that one weekend, man, I slept horrible. I felt more tired. I had more trouble trying, like I was struggling to like get to work. And then like usually like you take a break every hour, but it'd be like half an hour in. I'm like, oh, I don't feel like doing this or whatever it be. Like, I think it has such a bigger effect than people realize. And like you can watch any YouTube video on like people who've done it, and the effects are quite profound. And it's crazy when you remove it, just the amount of like inspiration and things like it does. Like you start seeing like things like full circle, like especially relationships or like the money thing, career. Like people are always like, oh, you see that dude with the Lambo, you know what I mean? The classic example. And you feel like you need it. When the reality is like, you're just not at that stage.
I think part of it is it frees up space in your brain to like foster that creativity. And and we're not saying that like somebody would have to like completely get rid of it. It's the point of a detox, right? It's a dopamine detox. Like you go do it for even 7 days, it'll make a big difference. But I'll do it for 30 days, and then I'm gonna try and make a goal that every 10 days, every month, I do it again.
Sounds like you're saying just don't be reliant on it.
Yeah, which is hard because a lot of people are, and
they don't even know that
they don't know. They don't know. It's the classic, like when I did it the first time in January, like I had to make sure all the apps were deleted because out of habit, I would like pick up my phone and like open it and go to click. Out of true habit, like I then would be like, holy, consciously, I'm like, what the fuck am I doing?
Dude, there's so much I want to add on this topic. Fuck. But we only have so much time.
Yeah,
I gotta pick and choose here.
We can maybe on like another episode dive super deep into it.
Yeah, maybe I'll just add this at the end because we should do like a legit dopamine detox episode because clearly we have a lot of threads to walk down with this one.
100%.
Man, I've actually been like pretty much away from it for probably like a year now, social media for the most part. So I remember listening to this another Mark Manson thing. Clearly, like I just love Mark Manson and everything he says. He's like one of my idols. He said like him and a bunch of the guys he knows are on a very strict social media diet. So not necessarily a detox, but they say I'm allowed 1 hour of consumption per day. That's it. It can be in the middle of the day, it can be at night, it can be in the morning, but I'm only allowing myself 1 hour. Otherwise, I cannot open any social apps for consumption purposes, just creation. I was like, that's really interesting. So I started giving it a try, and it will change your fucking life. Like I have done studies myself. Like I've tested this like with my own body, my own mind, where I will work super hard in the morning. You guys know when you have a morning when you're fucking crushing it and you're just like, I have so much momentum. I can go all day. I will open up Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube while I eat my lunch, and my motivation, boom.
You're fucked. Yeah.
All of a sudden I'm like, I just don't want to work, or like I can't focus. And I notice it as a teacher. This happens to my students all the fucking time. Like I'm like very aware of it, where I'll be like, hey guys, we're going to take a 15-minute break and then we'll come back and we'll do our homework. And on the 15-minute break, what do? They all open up their phones and they all go on TikTok. Half the class after will say, we just can't focus. Like we're going to head out early today. I'm like, fuck, you don't even realize what just happened.
Yep.
Fuck, you have no idea, like cause and effect. Like they're not aware enough to even realize that that's what they did to themselves.
Yeah.
And they're too addicted to want to get away from it. And to go a little further, I'm like, we might need like a full episode. To, like,
we'll save it for a full episode. But maybe what we'll do is in 30 days when the dopamine detox is up, we'll do an episode just on the detox itself, the experience, and then we can dive super deep into it.
You know, a question I would ask the audience, going back to how we started today, is how do you handle stress while taking on more work?
Yeah, that's a good one.
We talked about some practical aspects. We talked about some mental and psychological aspects. What are some things that we missed that people would find valuable? How do you do it? What are your tactics?
Absolutely. And if you guys want to support us, please share this with your friends.
Yeah.
And now I feel like a real podcast.
Hey, join the soft lifestyle, state of flow.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll do an episode on the actual soft lifestyle, and hopefully it turns into it will turn into a true movement. Mm-hmm. And I'm excited to see it all pan out.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
Let's go.
Wicked.